Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to Amazing Spider-Man 2. You're making me do it. You're making me do it. Look, I'm not a procrastinator at all, but yeah, I put this one off. I'm gonna be totally open and honest with you here. I have absolutely delayed this video as long as humanly possible, but with Spider-Man 2 impending, I want to get as many Spider-Man games done before we can do the ultimate Spider-Man retrospective. But ladies and gentlemen, I have reviewed countless Spider-Man games on this channel. The Raimi games. We did Amazing Spider-Man 1 recently. We've done so many different ones, but ladies and gentlemen, this one here behind me, if you couldn't tell by the very boring main menu that's just a fly through of New York City, this is an uninspired game. And yeah, I think it's the worst Spider-Man game ever made. There was one particular system in this game that left me so infuriated, but at the same time, I'm disgusted with myself. I have the platinum trophy for this game. And I remember this was during college, and I have a lot going on, and I just decided, you know what? I'm gonna go for it and listen to some podcasts, and it burned into my brain just how terrible this game is. And I hope to translate that experience properly to all of you, because much like Edge of Time, I don't want to come across overly aggressive here, like, yo, this game's mid, bro. Because I know there are a lot of fans of Edge of Time, and I know there are probably a lot of fans of this game. But truthfully, I cannot forgive it on any level for what it did to me. It's now personal. Let's set the table with that, shall we? So the year's 2012. Maddie's just a little junior in high school. He's getting out of his first relationship. His heart's a little bit broken. And it was a right game, right place kind of moment as Amazing Spider-Man 1 releases. And ladies and gentlemen, Beanox was showing up as, to me, the strongest competitor to Rocksteady with their Arkham series, making a Arkham-style Spider-Man game that we had always wanted to see. The open world was brilliant with lots of collectibles and crimes to solve. It felt like a next-gen Spider-Man 2. The boss fights were bombastic. You had a suit gradually deteriorating as you went through the main story, depicting this struggle all happening in a short period of time. And you also had the free flow combat. You had new movement mechanics like web rush. It felt forward thinking while at the same time hailing back to incredible Spider-Man games. And when you put, I thought, an enjoyable story in the middle of it all, sure, it wasn't emotional and maybe it wasn't as compelling as an Arkham game, you had that feeling of this is the start of something special. So when Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets announced, I'm sitting there thinking, they got all the tools built. They already got New York City. They already got web rush. They got the free flow. Just let them cook. Let them cook. And you hear the confirmation of, hey, we're going to have carnage in this game. You know, growing up with Spider-Man 64, that was the first encounter I ever had with Spider-Man. This game was like a life changer for me, man. I absolutely adore that game. We will talk about that soon. But Spider-Man 64 was also my introduction to Carnage and those creepy comic book strip-like cutscenes. I love that on the 64 version, but it really made Carnage terrifying with his voice actor for that game, and that was my first introduction to him. And I was always wondering, as a comic reader, why don't we get more Carnage? We need more Carnage, and we need him represented properly. Let's make a dark Spider-Man game. And so when he was confirmed for it, even if it was T for teen, I still had hopes that they would go to some dark areas and tell a more personal Spider-Man tale, especially in a game based around chasing down Uncle Ben's killer. So we'll leave it set there. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into Spider-Man content, we've done a lot here, and I swear we're much more positive on pretty much every single other Spider-Man game. I try to look at the good with the bad with all these videos, but this one, I'm sorry, I can't. But if you're looking for more positive Spider-Man content, I got your back. We have a ton of videos here on the channel. Or you like nostalgic retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Okay, normally we just transition right into the complete box experience, right? But if this ain't fuel to the fire, I don't know what is. So this game is arriving in 2014, and Activision's time with the Marvel license, which they had a stranglehold of, is slowly ticking. And it was after this game that I was like, rip that license out of their damn hands and give it to someone else. And fortunately, they did that, where we got the Insomniac Spider-Man game, which was, to me, as a kid growing up, loving Spider-Man, that is the Spider-Man game of my dreams. I adore it. My favorite PlayStation 4 exclusive, easily. So Amazing Spider-Man 2 rolls around, and you're probably wondering, where does this passionate hatred stem from? And I think I need to answer that first before I go into the story and the full gameplay. It is the hero and menace system. What I would define this moment as in my young adulthood when I played this game in college is like a head-on collision between kid me, who loved Spider-Man 2, and young adult me, whose tastes were aging and wanted something new from a Spider-Man game, just bang, going head-on. So in the hero and menace system, what happens is it's a reputation meter for Spider-Man. As you're swinging around the city, random crimes are going to pop up. And it makes sense. You see in so many of the movies, dating back to the Raimi movies, when Spider-Man's ignoring crime, the people are losing faith and they think negatively of him. The news starts to spill out from the Daily Bugle on how Spider-Man's just abandoned the people, and suddenly he's viewed more as a menace than a hero. So what this game basically does is takes your arm, puts it right behind your back and says, hey you, if you ignore any of this optional content, we're going to call in a task force that is going to continue to shoot at you as you try to web swing around the city. I kid you not, I have never yelled at my TV louder in my entire life. And I used to play Call of Duty on a competitive level in high school, by the way, when everyone was toxic. So think about that. I have never yelled at a television louder than when I was trying to just web swing around, go to my next main story mission, and I'm getting shot at constantly because of this hero and menace system. Now, some people may say, well, Maddie, come on, just grow up and do some of the side content if it's that big of a deal. Play by the game's rules. Well, no, because what happens is during the main story, as Spider-Man's reputation continues to get dragged down the gutters, it happens anyway. You get the hell shot out of you anyway. You get harassed regardless of all of this. So it's not even like, oh, let me go do some side crimes to offset this later in the story. No. They're just gonna, for like a whole 5 hours, it feels like, continue to shoot at you endlessly as you go from mission to mission. It is terrible. It is an experience killer. It has a great system idea fall flat on its face, where maybe they could have tied it to something like a morality system like they did with Web of Shadows, where Web of Shadows isn't my favorite Spider-Man game, but on an idea level, oh my god, do I love it. Choice and consequence, evil Spider-Man, good Spider-Man, that stuff is great, like to the point where there are murders that you can commit as evil Spider-Man, if you will. I mean, that type of stuff is great in my opinion. And I feel like the hero and menace system, when you're facing Uncle Ben's killer, it just spells itself out for you how this should go. And I'm not even trying to fight with the system as is, because I think as is, it could have worked. But when it involves bringing in a task force to shoot at you constantly as you try to web swing, it makes for a downright awful experience. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I can't stand this game. Now you may ask, why did you platinum it? Okay, here's a great answer for you. I was a poor college student. So for me, what I was doing was trying to get the most out of my investment at that time. So I flipped on a podcast. I actually think it was the Kind of Funny Gamescast or whatever it was back in, 2014. And I just grinded the suits. The same prison mission over and over for 5 hours. I popped the platinum. I remember ejecting my disc, driving to GameStop, and having this great moment of getting it out of my life. That's why you have the PS3 version back here. I'm not buying a more expensive version of this game. I'm getting cheap with it. I can't stand it. It's out of the collection as soon as this video is done. That's what I feel about this game, truthfully. Okay, now I don't want to be toxic. I don't want to be toxic because Amazing Spider-Man 2, I think its biggest problem in all seriousness is the lack of new ideas. When I laid out to you what it was like experiencing Amazing Spider-Man 1 just a few short years before that and getting into, seeing the web rush system for the first time, seeing Spider-Man in free flow for the first time, all this was new and exciting. And in a sequel, you take the old, you try to innovate upon it a little bit more, but if it's not broken, don't fix it, which much of the game was that, but you gotta add on somewhere. It's just where they chose to add felt either uninspired or they had no clue what to do because the turnaround time was just too short. Not only is the hero menace system poorly executed, but I think of the weird dialogue system that this game has, where on the back of the box, they literally promoted that you can converse with villains like Kingpin, and that's pretty much just a dialogue selection wheel, and you can just opt out at any time. It feels super strange, especially when combined with the game's weird pacing where it's very tutorialized for a long while, I feel, as you go from, chasing down Uncle Ben's killer to visiting Stan Lee in a comic shop to pretty much unlock the ability to get collectibles in the world, to chasing down the killer of your uncle in broad daylight, to chase him into an alley only to find that, you know, Carnage had got to him somehow in broad daylight and wrote a whole message on the wall. It's just like ludonarrative dissonance at the same time, which I can be forgiving of, but when I was already ticked off, I was like, this is just already starting to lose me. There are great moments in the story, like Kraven and Spider-Man working together to hunt down Carnage, and then you find out that Kraven was actually hired by Kingpin. Stuff like that is cool. That is where the Rogues Gallery works its best, is when you have these complex relationships that are kind of laid beneath the surface, and they subvert your expectations, because for these games up until this point, you see a Spider-Man game and you go, oh, okay, you know, I'm going to pick it up because Spider-Man. You're not like how it is nowadays where it's Spider-Man PS4 and you're thinking to yourself like, okay, this is going to be a original story with new characters potentially. Like, it was a whole different ball game back then. So the conversation system doesn't work, the story doesn't work, the hero menace system eventually breaks the gameplay, and the problem is the gameplay is too comfortable. Not the free flow system. In fact, I still really to this day like Amazing Spider-Man 2 and even Amazing Spider-Man 1's combat. There is, just like the Arkham games, a rhythm to it. There are finishers, there is a flow, there are a lot of enemy types. I feel like that is the best part of the game, and you can go into an arcade machine and just fight. Another way to unlock suits, to grind suits, so yeah, you're gonna be doing that a lot if you ever go for the Platinum Trophy. Trust me, I remember, because you wanna complete all the challenges in there. But remember what I said about kid me and young adult me going into this head-on collision? That's because this game unapologetically leans into the Spider-Man 2 nostalgia and just hopes you won't care. It's unapologetically similar, even down to boarding the top of a car and pounding it and taking out hostages and taking out people driving the vehicle. And I know you could say the same about, as I continue to praise it, the Insomniac Spider-Man PS4 game. Hey, it had the car chases too that you would pull enemies out of and save hostages from, but it did enough new things that I didn't care. This game just felt like a rerun of Spider-Man 2 with worse systems attached to it. And it made me want to pull my hair out, because I didn't want to dislike Spider-Man 2 more because of this game, but it felt like an insult to the game that defined the open world superhero games of my childhood. Like, for a long while, there were so many developers trying to reach what Spider-Man 2 had done, and it took them a while to really get there. That's where Activision was at the top of the mountain, putting out some of the best superhero games. You'd get Hulk Ultimate Destruction after that, and then they'd use that tech to build Prototype. But at that time, when you look at what had become of Spider-Man, it was a heartbreaker, man. Especially because I feel like there weren't improvements in areas that made sense. Again, I'm like a broken record here. Spider-Man PS4, they finally got wall crawling on the ceiling right, camera positioning right, stealth gameplay as Spidey right. Finally, we got all of that. But with this game, they didn't even feel like they tried to ameliorate those issues. It's frustrating because what they added that was new was done horribly, and what they kept that was old was not modified. It felt in the slightest or innovated upon, and when you threw them into these weird stealth setups like crawling around, not even on the ceiling or on the walls, but literally being Spider-Man on foot for stealth missions, it just felt like a lack of care. Like, okay, put out another Spider-Man game. And it felt fitting that this was really the last one from the Activision era. It was a continuous downward spiral. You'd get great moments like Shattered Dimensions. You get great moments like the first Amazing Spider-Man, but it felt like the one-offs, every other, were just huge pitfalls. I did not like Edge of Time. I did not like Amazing Spider-Man 2, and so on. You'd get weirder ones like Friend or Foe. We'll talk about that eventually. But you would just get too many drop-offs, and eventually I think the quality was so low, and you saw clear as day that, you know, Disney, Marvel were like, yo, we want to do what DC's doing. Marvel's as big as it's ever been, and you got Arkham games killing it, and you don't have the talent to do that, clearly. So they move on, Insomniac happens, and we get a phenomenal game in that. But this game just, I want to love it. I do. And when I sat down and played it, I really went in with an open mind. But it's immediately what I define as my biggest pet peeve in games, because it's a feel thing. passionately mediocre is the term I use. And if you've watched my content for a while, you'll know that actually a really bad game doesn't infuriate me as one that had the potential for greatness and almost feels like it didn't care enough to go and reach it. There are moments like I think of the Saints Row reboots or Redfall that come out and we're just merciless because the game's, I think, straight up bad. But then you get something like this, which I think with a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra love, could have been something special. But it just misses the ball on everything from fine tuning to brand new systems not even being there. It just felt like run it back. First one was pretty good. Hopefully they don't care. And I'm sure it sold well. I'm sure some people really like it. And I'm looking forward to seeing that discourse down below. But this game, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot stand. So with that, I don't want to get too overbearingly negative at this point. I just want to go ahead and deliver the message. Can't stand this game. Job is complete. With that, I'm looking forward to hearing from you. What do you make of Amazing Spider-Man 2? Do you like it more than me? Can you not stand it? Am I on this island thinking that this game really isn't great at all? I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts down below. Be sure to fire away. And with that, take excellent care of yourselves. And I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace